The 2 a.m. tumult. Late-night L.A. out for burgers, borscht, and bagels. Beatniks and beaten-down Bennyheads in battered Bonnevilles. Cholos in chopped-down Chevys, riding on cheater slicks. Car hops rolling roisterous on roller skates. All mincy males laid out in lacy loungewear. Buddy Burko's bugmobile back by the men's room. Beside it, Voyeur Vance Vanning's van. Freaky Fred Turrentine wolfing French fries at an inside counter. I whipped back to Wilshire and parked. I brought my beady browns up against my Bausch and Lombs and went into ocular orbit. Dig. Sweat beads bipping off the brow of that too-tall car hop topping off the tape toward 6'8". A sweaty swish with the shakes. His tray twitched and twisted and almost toppled 2 twin cheeseburger plates. He fed the food to 2 Filipinos in a Ford Fairlane. He flitted back to a little shack lit by floodlights. He stood by the door and chain-smoked 2 Chesterfield Kings. Envy entered my heart. An enlightened sense of entitlement entered my soul. A cosmic course of covetousness covered my whole being. This gig should be mine. I was the scandal-scamming, skinny-skimming scopophiliac king. The scopophiliacal scope of this gig screamed Getchell. I alakazammed to Allah, genuflected to Jesus, and called out to that cat the kikes call God. I said I'd keister communists and bash ban the bombers and dig up dirt on that Dowager Dyke Eleanor Roosevelt. I'd donate dough to a Moslem mosque. I'd put in with Pat Boone, wear white buck shoes, and warble at a Billy Graham crusade. I wouldn't print my piece on Rabbi R.R. Ravitz and that Hebrew school Hannah he humped last Hanukkah. I shut my eyes. I gave the God guys time to get together and go for my deal. I could feel them finagling the fine points. Divine deals demand deliberation. I opened my eyes. Ben Luboff bopped in front of my binoculars. He slid the sweaty swish a C-note and slid into the shack alone. The swish sashayed up to a lavender Lincoln and leaned in. Ben bribed the too-tall Brunzer. That meant he didn't want to roust his racket. The gig developed different dimensions, maybe divinely deigned. I latched my lenses on the Lincoln and locked my eyes in hard. I saw hunky Rock Hudson hand up a handful of hard cash. All praise to Allah, joy to Jesus, hush, hush, hosannas to the Hebrew God. Rock locked his Lincoln, ditched the drive-in, and joyfully jaywalked straight across Wilshire. He walked up to the front of the Fine Arts movie house and made with a wicked wolf whistle. A winsome wolf whistle whisked back his way. A muscular man-child meandered out of a moonbeam and leaned in the lobby doorway. Rock, you rambunctious rump ranger. Rock loped into the lobby. The kid locked them in. They disappeared near a dark candy counter. I blew out of my Buick and flew around the Fine Arts fast-footed. I saw blue lights blink at the back of the building upstairs. I shimmied up a shaky drain pipe and shagged myself onto a ledge. I undulated through an unlocked window and heard Rock ululating. I landed on a lopsided pile of film cans. I pitched forward and pulled myself up. I peeped through a pebble-glass door and saw shadows shifting down a short hallway. I fast-footed it out of the film storage room. I saw flickery flits of light flick out from below 2 doorways. I ducked down the dark hall. Shifty shadows shot up from the door slits. I crept up on them and got down in a crab-crawl crouch. I slid one eye up against the door slits. I saw a punk cameraman with a Panaflex Portacam packed into a pod-shaped peephole. Next door, Rock and the monster-hung man-child making meat-mangling motions on a light-colored couch with the lights on. Motherfucker. Minuscule mini-mics taped to a tall table lamp. I flew back to the film storage room. I rapidly re-shimmied down that drain pipe. I whizzed across Wilshire, looped around La Cienega, and ducked down an alley behind Dolores's drive-in. I vaulted a vine-covered fence, veered past Vance Vanning's van, and vibrated up to that shitty little shack that the sweaty swish had swayed by. The drive-in was deep in a late-night lull. I spotted 6 sleds snouted into snack-serving slots. I looked left and wrapped my eyeballs right. I didn't see the Sweaty Swish or Ben Luboff. I saw Vance Vanning and Buddy Burko buzzing logs in their bug vans. I fearlessly faced the shack door. I nervously knocked and locked my loins to fight a scandal-skank war of some scope. Nobody answered. I wiggled the door open and walked in uninvited. A lousy little all-linoleum office, disinfectant stench, a dirty desk, and a doily-covered chair. A closet. A preciously apropos prop and a prime hideout hole. I hid in the closet. I hunched myself up and heaved for breath. Methadrine-mad minutes marched by. I sweated and swore out a warrant on Ben Luboff's hide. I heard the outer door open and shut, furtive footsteps and vague voices. I peered through a pint-sized pinhole in the closet door. I saw Ben Luboff and the Sweaty Swish. Perspiration poured over the pinhole and voided my view. I locked my eyes shut and listened. Ben said, "You know, it's ironic. I've been hearing about your service for years, but it took a tip from fucking Danny Getchell to get me to contact you." The Sweaty Swish said, "Choice chicken doll, the best boys in the West, and a good rep for discretion." Ben said, "Yeah, and that's why The Rock buys all his extracurricular tail from you." The Sweaty Swish said, "The Rock ain't nothing but a hound dog. He's got a perfectly gorgeous lover at home, an art director at Metro. But he's got to roll around with every Tom, Dick, and Harriet he can find, with the emphasis on Dick." Ben said, "You've never forgiven him, have you? He broke your heart, and that's what makes this deal so sweet for you." The Sweaty Swish said, "Truer words never spoken, doll, and God, it was torture selling boys to him." Ben said, "Vengeance is sweet, baby cakes. You get your shot at The Rock, I get mine at the Schmendrick Getchell." "In your fagel-finagling dreams, you fucking." The Sweaty Swish said, "You're sure we can't get hurt on this?" Ben said, "Nix. My camera guy set up a breakaway set at the Fine Arts. If The Rock takes the fuzz back there, they won't find the room he told them about. It was all strictly clandestine. My camera guy let your boy in the theater, and none of the theater chumps know that any of this happened." The Sweaty Swish said, "Vengeance is mine, saith both of us." Ben said, "Especially me. See, I gave Getchell that tip on Don Jordan's whore racket, and I called Don and clued him in that Getchell was onto his biz. Now, Don Jordan is a bad hombre to fuck with. He killed lots of guys in the Dominican Republic, and he's tight with this Spick gang, the Apaches, out in Boyle Heights. I think it's safe to say that Danny Getchell's days are numbered." I swirled sweat off my face and popped an eye up to the pint-sized pinhole. Ben said, "And look, call it penance. I've done a shitty thing by exposing our kind of people, but now I'm doing all of us a mitzvah by taking Getchell out." "Penance? Our people?" Ben leaned in and kissed the Sweaty Swish on the lips. He said, "Later, lover," and languidly loped out the door. I crashed out of the closet, crazily out of control. The Sweaty Swish saw me. He swirled and swung a switchblade out of his pocket. He pirouetted and pounced. I closed the closet door, swiveled, and swung it at him. His switchblade swiped wood. He swung off balance. I swatted at his knife and kicked him in the kidneys and the cojones. He clipped the closet door. I clotheslined him and claimed his knife off the floor. I clamped down on his neck and kicked out his legs and laid him out on the linoleum. I pinned him prone and swicked sweat beads off his beak with my blade. I said, "Sing, shitbird." He coughed and caught some breath. He hemmed, hawed, and hummed in hyperventilation. He stopped and stared at me. He got hip to the hard hophead hate I had for him and put it all out prestissimo. "It all went down today. You tipped off Ben to my operation, which he'd heard rumors about for years. Ben told me you'd ratted me out. But why blow a potentially sweet partnership when we could work breakaway bedroom jobs and snag some big people? I wanted to put some hurt on Rock, and Ben and I both wanted to nail you for all the gay folk you've messed with." I leaned in laceratingly low. So this was a scandal squeeze on the Rock. Pay, or see yourself in Whisper. The Sweaty Swish said, "Yes." I said, "How much were you going to squeeze him for?" The Sweaty Swish said, 25 G's. I leaned in lower and laughed. Rock doesn't have it. I heard he took a bath on a real estate deal. The Sweaty Swish swung a sweet smile at me. Then look for the Rock on the cover of the June 1958 issue of Whisper. Whisper wins wicked war of words. The hush-hush hegemony wiped out with a whimper. I blinked. The Sweaty Swish blindsided me blindingly fast. He landed a left on my lips. He ratched a right to my chin. A knee bit my balls and bounced me backward. The Sweaty Swish swung to his feet. I flattened myself to the floor, grabbed his 2 fat floor shimes, and watched him fly back where he'd been. He landed on linoleum, lurched upright, and laughed. I lobbed my knife and lanced him in the larynx. Chapter 4. I punked out and panicked. I left the Sweaty Swish larynx lashed and laid out in lurid state. I ran from the hellacious homicide. I popped up to my pad off Pico. I saw a pack of pachucos parked outside, mean Mexicans in mohair shirts and mohawk haircuts, machismo-mangled minions, Don Jordan's homicidal hermanos. I hauled to the hush-hush office. I hit on a horrific scene out of Hieronymus Bosch. Heaps of hush-hush dirt files tossed and torched to Cinder City. Scandal skinny scorched and dumped into dust piles. Art sheets shivved and shorn to shit. Type trays trashed and chairs chopped into chop suey. My crew, bruised, contused, confused, and ripped from a raid on Dave Duckweiler's dope stash. Dawn. I dashed back to Dolores's drive-in and dipped by at a safe distance. I drove one-handed and drilled the dive with my Bausch binoculars. Cops, a bevy of bulls from the Beverly Hills PD. 2 guys swinging the Sweaty Swish onto a sheet-shrouded stretcher. A big bull bracing Ben Luboff, nellyingly nervous and limp-wristedly lily-white now. Shit shaking inside the shack. Drones dripping print powder on the symbiotically symbolic closed closet door. Checking it out, Chief Clinton Anderson. I fought a fit of foul fucking fear. I fondled that door and forgot to wipe my prints. I buzzed by the BHPD building. By the back door, 2 bulls and Buddy Bug King Burko. Buddy looked beat on. I knew the bulls had bopped him with beaver tail saps. I bombed my Buick out of Beverly Hills. I ran my radio for random newscasts. KMPC coughed up crap on Croatian commies and switched to a swift bit on the Sweaty Swish. A commentator called it a suicide. Clinton Anderson confirmed the call conclusively. I was perspiringly perplexed and pulsatingly puzzled. I sent up guarded thanks to my guardian angel and dipped the dial to the BHPD band. All BHPD units only. APB on Daniel Douglas Getchell. Getchell. White male, 28. 6'1", 180. Brown and brown, driving a 1953 Buick Skylark. License GBD 882. Be advised, BHPD units only. Approach and bring to station. What? A pristinely private bulletin to bag me. A BHPD exclusive. To swing with the Sweaty Swish suicide. I felt bad boogie bopping my way. I bombed to Burbank and breezed by Brad's auto dump. I boosted fresh plates off an old Oldsmobile and placed them over my plates. I plowed back to L.A. and mainlined myself to the L.A. Times morgue. I felt intertwined intrigues interdicting me. I played a hush-hush hunch and read reports on recent Beverly Hills burglaries. 6. Slickly slotted from late 57 to last week. Ulceratingly unsolved. Salivatingly similar stats. Bedroom boosts while Mama and Papa went out to separate parties. Large losses and no standard talk of stakeouts to bag the B&E bad boys. Bad BHPD boogie bopping my way. Twisted twirls and circles circumscribing me. I popped to a payphone and called Steve Crane. I told him to light out to the luau lickety-split. I beelined to Bedford Drive in Beverly Hills. I Bausch and Lommed Lana Turner's backyard. I saw Johnny Stompanato jump on Lana and lash out with limitlessly lewd language. Lana lashed back. She julienned Johnny with jive on his jilt-happy gigolo ways. She spritzed spite. She shot shit at him shamelessly. She pounced on his pint-sized penis and his wicked welterweight dupe, Don Jordan. She called him a guinea gangster and said he poured the pork to her Mexican maid with his poquito pee-pee. She said he pandered and pimped her and got her gussied up in her own Givenchy gown. Some show. A bracing breakfast bash on beautiful Bedford. Dig the all-star audience perched on their porches with pancakes and poached eggs. Dino, Duke Wayne, Walt Disney, wolfing Wheaties. That white-haired wimp on the Webster Webfoot show. Steve Crane said, "So I'm letting Don Jordan run girls out of here. So Yolanda Paez brings me back the latest on Lana and Johnny. So what? You want to write the story up? Great. But it's the last you'll ever peep out of my peepholes." The luau was listlessly still. Steve opened up early to meet me. My meth jolt was melting down. I mixed a mammoth martini to remagnetize it. "I think Johnny crashed Jordan's whore racket and lured Yolanda into it, and I think the girls are the advance team for a burglary angle that Johnny and Jordan are working." Steve stirred his planter's punch and braced his back into the bar. "I'm sure there's lots of angles in this thing. Yolanda told me the girls are hooking so they can bring their families up from Mexico and that Jordan will smuggle them across the border, get them kitchen jobs, and take a cut of their pay. I can't complain. He's promised me 3 dishwashers off his next run." I said, "Don's a fucking sweetheart." "Yeah, and he may be the next welterweight champ. I heard he's fighting Honey Bear Akins in the fall. And Mickey Cohen's got a piece of his contract." "Right, which is not exactly a news flash." "Does Mickey have some truck with Don?" "He can calm him down and get him to call off some of his crazier stunts. Why?" I gulped Gilbey's and vermouth. "Nothing, but let me run some names by you. Jack Hansen, Chick Nadell, James B. Harris, Ted Jaffe, Russ Pierce." Steve stopped me. "All luau regulars, all men with big fucking money." I said, "All burglary victims that Don and Johnny's girls picked up here. All married men too embarrassed to cop to the fact that they let whores into their pads and got B&E'd as a result." Steve said, "Jesus fucking Christ." I said, "No. Daniel Douglas Getchell. And listen, Johnny and Don are operating a bit too freely in Beverly Hills. Can you throw some light on that?" Steve drained his drink and munched a maraschino cherry. "Clinton Anderson's got a regular John thing going with Yolanda. He met her here, and she told me that Johnny knows all about it." Circling circles. Puzzle pieces popping into place. Chief Anderson chewed up Ben Luboff at Dolores's drive-in. Ben blew the word. He'd dished me dirt on Don Jordan's doings. The chief charged him to silence. The print pros took my prints off the closet door. The chief chewed things over and decided not to swear out a warrant on the sweaty swish homicide. The chief wanted to check me out up close and clip me. I might be hush-hush hip to his yen for Yolanda. I might make him as a Mexican whoremonger and Stompanato stooge. Steve made himself a massive Mai Tai. He said, "Lana, it was so good with you, baby." I said, "Call Yolanda. Tell her I can get her a permanent green card if she beds a guy who doesn't like girls." I was hush-hush hot. I was warrant wanted and baited by a BHPD bounty. I traded my boss Buick for a busboy's boogied-out wheels. A real Congo coach, Coon maroon paint matched to matted mink seats. I left the luau in lieu of a new hideout hut. I rocked up to the Rock's pad on Roscommare Road and rang the bell. Rock opened up, regal and righteously razzed off in a royal blue kimono. I caught sight of a kimono-clad cutie behind him, a pretty punk pouting into page 2 of today's paper. Rock ripped into me. "You're getting bold, Danny. I usually find you going through my garbage or trying to crawl in my bedroom window." The playmate flipped me the finger. I blew him a bitchy kiss and latched a look on his Herald Express. Wow, a sharp shot of the sweaty swish, sheet shrouded and dead. Rock re-ripped me. "An old friend of mine killed himself last night, and I'm in no mood to fuck around with a lowlife like you." I deflated his diatribe. "I'm moving in with you. You're going to hide me out so I can fuck Ben Luboff for fucking me and fuck him for fucking you with that kid you fucked at the Fine Arts last night." Rock rocked, rolled, listed, lurched, and landed in my arms. I moved in. I moved out of my methadone mode with Milltown and Macallan Scotch. I made machinations to save myself and rescue the Rock. I called Mickey Cohen. I tipped him to Candy Bar's barrage of shit behind his back and begged him to call off Don Jordan. Mickey tossed a tantrum and told me he'd try. I called in a cautiously coded note to Clinton Anderson. I told the Chief's chief chump to check this. I chomp at the chance to be the Chief's chief informant, and I need to stay alluringly alive. Let's talk later. I've got lots of lovely dirt to drop on the BHPD. Steve Crane did his duty and duped Yolanda Paez into my plan to play out here at Rock's playpen. Said plan, to plant Yolanda and Rock in the sack and sock in a prank prowler call to my plant with the LAPD. The plant plants calls to his private press contacts. Prowler prowls at Rock's Roscommare Rancho right now. Black and White's bomb to Bel Air. Reporters run to Rock's ranch. I fire shots out a back bedroom. Cops kick the door in and find Rock and his ex-mama fucking feverishly. Reporters find them and flood them with flashbulb flares. I sell my pre-shot sex shots to Randy Rothstein at Rave and Terry Tompkins at Tattle. Ben Luboff gets skinned alive and scooped by the scoop of the scopophiliac century. Rock Hudson is straight. I yanked Yolanda to the playpen and played her through rehearsals with the richly reluctant Rock. The Rock's live-in lover took it all horrifically hard. He drank himself into dramatic hysterics and hurled hate hexes at me in a slithery and scintillating silence. I had constellated his self-contempt and crisply crystallized it. He hated himself for his love for hunky hound dog Hudson. He'd sweated the sweaty swish story out of the Rock. Rock's cowboy carousing blistered and blackened his heart. He was afraid that Rock would renounce his rump-happy ways with a real revisionistic yen for Yolanda. He blamed all this multiplied mishigas dead on me. Rock promised to drop some graft gelt and glom Yolanda a green card. Yolanda laid out some lurid Lana-Johnny tales of late. Lana and Johnny were wrapped in a ripe roundelay of sex and self-hatred. Brazen brawls and licentious language. Lana was ready to cut the cord and juke Johnny out of her life. Yolanda said she'd pay prime pop to liberate her love letters. I called Lana and laid out a deal. I said I'd latch onto the letters. She said she'd lure Johnny to her lair and call Yolanda at Rock's Rancho. I'd run to Johnny's pad and pounce on her packet of purple prose then. I set the date for the Prowler Prowl press gig, 4/4/58. Good Friday. A good day to crucify and crush the rumor that Rock ran the Greek way. A good way to resurrect him and hail him as heterosexual. We waited. We worried details. Rock and I belted bonded bourbon and bullshitted our way down to D-Day. Rock psyched me out and psychoanalyzed me. I told him about my chicken shit childhood in Chillicothe, Ohio. I told him how my Meshuggah mom mistreated me. She only let me read one book, a thick thesaurus. Rock bestowed a bourbon-bombed benediction on me. I told him that Hush Hush would always run and rag him as a raging pussy hound. I think we might have hugged once, but don't tell anyone. 8:10 p.m., Friday, 4/4/58. The lilac-covered carpet on Rock's living room floor. Rock jumped out of his jockey shorts. Yolanda yanked off her dress and stamped herself with the stations of the cross. I bored my eyes in on her and buzzed the fuzz. My cop buddy caught the call. Los Angeles Police Department, Sergeant Helgeland speaking. I said, Prowler at 841 Roscommare, Bel Air. Shots fired. I hung up, hauled upstairs, and smoked 2 Smith & Wesson rounds out a rear window. I heard the live-in lover boo-hoo and beat his fists on the bed he bounced on with the rock. I bounced back downstairs and went big-time bug-eyed. It was supposed to be a faux fuck. It wildly and willfully wasn't. Rock had Yolanda priapically pinioned. She had her eyes shut. She couldn't catch Rock surreptitiously centered on a male centerfold spread. The phone rang. Yolanda yelped and rocked off of Rock. She said, It is Good Friday. I have a premonition. She pounced on the phone. I perched by the earpiece and heard what she heard. Hissingly, hush, hush. Johnny, hitting me. I'm so afraid. Yolanda wrapped herself in Rock's robe and ran out the door. She ran to Rock's lavender Lincoln and raised rubber. I ran out and tailed her in my coon coach. We passed a big bevy of black and whites rolling toward Rock's rancho. We bombed to Bedford Drive in Beverly Hills. We lashed into Lana Turner's house 16 seconds apart. We bombed up to an upstairs bedroom. I froze in the doorway and caught a frightful freeze-frame frisson. Lana, terrified, tear-streaked. A teenage girl, shiny-eyed, in shock and scared shitless. Johnny Stompanato staring at the knife. Yolanda just jammed in him. That's the real story. Off the record, on the QT, and very hush-hush. I latched onto Lana's letters late that night. I leaked 2 to Ben Luboff and bought Rock back into the closet. I closed the closet door on Ben's big toe. I told him to clear me with Clinton Anderson, or I'd clip him for that sweet smack he swung on the sweaty swish. He capitulated and kowtowed and called me back. He passed me a cautiously codified Anderson aside. I know where you were Good Friday. YP going south. Let's go with the public version. A deal went down behind BHPD doors. Anderson could not afford to yank Yolanda and push her public and stamp her for the Stompanato snuff. The chief chiseled out a deal and chilled himself out of trouble and chipped Cheryl Crane into a chump child charge. Lana let it go down. Anderson addressed her with a big bag of dirt he took from Terry Tompkins at Tattle. Lana liked to les with Lila Lee once in a soft sapphic moon. Terry had a pack of Polaroids. Don Jordan decided to let me live. He decisioned Honey Bear Akins and wore the welterweight crown for 15 fat months. Benny Kid Parrott mugged him and took his title in May 1960. Some malefactors mugged him for real and murdered his mulatto ass in the mid-90s. Yolanda moved back to Mexico. Hollywood had its hooks in her. She transcended the tragedies of her life and triumphed as a snuff film auteur. Steve Crane crapped out in '85. Those lavish luau liquor libations lopped out his liver. The live-in lover left the Rock for Liberace. He maliciously maintained that I turned Rock straight, despite a massive mountain of definitive data that conclusively contradicted him. Rock and I remained friends. I pressed his preposterous straight credentials in hush-hush and herded him to a herbalist when I heard he had AIDS. Potent potions prolonged Rock's life for a small parcel of time. My current prognosis is presumably much better. I want to live. I want to lay out the scopophiliac scope of my life in a non-mea culpa manner. I want to slap myself in serial form all over GQ. I've got an artful array of dirt on Art Cooper, the editor-in-chief. I've extorted him into publishing this piece. I've got dirt to illegitimize Elena Silverman, Art's most artful editor. They'll print what I tell them to. I talked to my doctors today. My red blood count is oscillating optimistically up. I might make it to the moment that they dig up and discover a cure. The gun of 3 gurneys down is still staring at me. He's looking more and more familiar. He's tripping out of the tableau that I just tantalizingly tattled. I've got him on the tip of my tongue. Right there, right. The Rock's lachrymose live-in lover. The cuckolded kid who cursed me back in... He made me make him. He made a geriatric jump in my direction. He's got a hypodermic full of hyper-hazy, health-hazarding shit. He wants to reinfect me and get his revenge on the Rock. I grabbed the sharp shiv shoved under my bed. September 1998. Tijuana, Mon Amour. A work of fiction. I lashed the live-in lover and left him for dead. A night nurse noted his absence and noticed his knees nudged under my bed. She hauled him out. She hydrated him. She tricked up a transfusion and blasted him with black market blood. She saved his life. She convinced a kangaroo court to convict me of assault on an AIDS ward. She trumped up a tribunal and jerry-rigged a jury. She found 5 fags and fed them facts on my fag-fragging hush-hush heyday. They banished me to a basement stuffed with stacks of old newspapers. Doctors dip by and drizzle my IV drip. Pill pushers pump me with potions. A homophobic herbalist hops by and hails me as his heterosexual hero. I regale him with riotous riffs on scandal scores and outrageous outings. We ponder my plight as a fag-fragger plowed with the HIV plague. I mope most mornings and meander most afternoons. I drag my IV drip and stumble. I study the stacks of old newspapers and notice my name now and then. I bop back to better times. I relive my reign as a nihilist knight and dream draconian. Los Angeles Herald-Express, June 3, 1955. Monahan killers executed at San Quentin. At 10 this morning, Barbara Graham, John Jack Santo, and Emmett Perkins, the convicted slayers of Burbank widow Mabel Monahan, went to their deaths in the gas chamber at San Quentin State Prison. The executions capped a frantic series of appeals and phone calls to Governor Goodwin J. Knight. Governor Knight rejected last-minute pleas to save the lives of the convicted killers and sent them to their deaths for the 1953 murder. Santo wept and squealed as he was dragged to the gas chamber. Perkins and Miss Graham submitted to their punishment stoically. Miss Graham asserted her innocence a few moments before she was put to death. Los Angeles County Prosecutor J. Miller Levy, who successfully tried the case, called her statement poppycock. Barbara Graham was just as guilty as her murderous cohorts, and she was justly punished for her grievous transgression. On the evening of March 9, 1953, Santo, Perkins, Miss Graham, and 2 men named John True and Baxter Shorter broke into Mabel Monahan's house, convinced that she was harboring $100,000 belonging to a gambler nephew. True and Shorter looked on in horror as Perkins, Santo, and Miss Graham pistol-whipped Mrs. Monahan in an effort to get her to reveal the location of the money. Mrs. Monahan told them that there was no cache of money, a statement which was proven to be true. Enraged, Santo, Perkins, and Miss Graham beat Mrs. Monahan to death. John True voluntarily surrendered and turned state's evidence. Baxter Shorter disappeared before Santo, Perkins, and Miss Graham were apprehended. It is assumed that Santo and Perkins killed him to ensure his silence. Santo and Perkins were suspected of having committed several other robbery murders in Northern California, dating back to 1951. Miss Graham was a narcotics addict and former prostitute. Her good looks and steadfast protestations of her innocence gained her a sympathetic audience among the general public and a small sector of the press. Before Miss Graham, Santo, and Perkins's trial, rumors of police DA's office dirty tricks aimed at finagling a confession from Miss Graham surfaced. Deputy DA Levy called the rumors poppycock. Every attempt that the DA's office and members of the Los Angeles and Beverly Hills police departments made in order to get Miss Graham to recant her preposterous allegations of innocence were entirely legal and above board. The bodies of the 3 convicted killers will be shipped to undisclosed locations for burial. Los Angeles Mirror, December 17, 1955. Payola probe in works. Headed for grand jury? A confidential source within the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office told Mirror reporters that members of the Beverly Hills and Los Angeles Police Departments, along with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, are conducting a probe into payola, the practice of bribing radio announcers or disc jockeys into giving certain recordings preferential amounts of playing time on their programs. The probe will allegedly focus on KMPC disc jockey Flash Flood and his treatment of Linda Lansing's current 45 RPM single, Baby It's Cold Inside. Flood, the former Arthur John Beecham, has been playing the novelty song at least 16 times a day since the record was released on October 11th. When asked to comment on this, Flood told a Mirror reporter, "What can I say? I dig the side and I dig Linda Lansing, and nobody's paid me to dig either one. And I dig all the publicity I've been getting, because it's boosted my ratings way up, but I don't dig all the heavy treatment I've been getting from the fuzz, although I do dig all the heavy names that are getting caught up in this thing." Linda Lansing, the former Hilda Claire Wassmansdorf, is the look-alike younger sister of actress Joy Lansing, co-star of The French Line and Son of Sinbad. Baby It's Cold Inside was Miss Lansing's debut recording, and it was written for her by acclaimed songsmith Sammy Kahn. Miss Lansing is chiefly known as the model and pitch woman for Teitelbaum Furs in Beverly Hills, and her gimmick is performing advertisement jingles, fur-clad, on Tom Duggan's weekly Gabfest on Channel 13. She recently appeared as a singer at the Igloo Club in Long Beach and the Trianon Bowling Alley Lounge in Southgate, but both engagements were considered unsuccessful. Flash Flood told the Mirror, "I dug Linda's act at both venues. I dig the way she sells a song, and I dig it that she wears short fur coats and nothing else as her trademark. Frankly, I dig Linda the most, but that doesn't mean I took payola to spin her side." The Los Angeles District Attorney's Office does think that someone has paid Flood to promote Baby It's Cold Inside. Prosecutor J. Miller Levy told the Mirror, "We think we're dealing with payola pure and simple, and several police agencies are looking into it for us." Sergeant Robert Duhamel of the Beverly Hills Police Department confirmed Deputy D.A. Levy's statement. "Where there's smoke, there's fire," Duhamel told the Mirror, "and our investigation is turning up some prominent people." Duhamel refused to comment on which prominent people. The Mirror went to Danny Getchell, editor-in-chief and head writer for the notorious scandal magazine Hush Hush. Getchell claimed that his piece in the December issue, Payola Pantheon, Sexational Sinatra and Luscious Linda Lansing Linked, sparked Deputy D.A. Levy's probe. Getchell told the Mirror, "I got a tip that Frank Sinatra was paying Flash Flood to promote Linda Lansing's song, and I confirmed that tip to my satisfaction and wrote it up in the December issue. That's all I'll say. I'll never feed your newspaper any hot leads that I could publish in my magazine. You can't blame me for that, can you?" Deputy D.A. Levy and Sergeant Duhamel would not comment on Mr. Getchell's assertions. Frank Sinatra and Linda Lansing could not be reached for comment. Flash Flood told the Mirror, "I don't dig Danny Getchell. He's a parasite passing himself off as a journalist. I dig Sinatra and I dig Linda Lansing. And dig this. I think Skip Town, a rival disc jockey, and the former Saul Irving Moskowitz, tipped off Getchell to louse up my career. Payola schmayola. What we've got here is freedom of speech run amok. You can dig that, can't you?" Skip Town could not be reached for comment. Danny Getchell told the Mirror, "I stand by my piece in Hush Hush, and I condemn Flash Flood's accusations as libelous and communistic. Freedom of speech should always serve as a search for the truth, and the truth is my moral mandate." Chapter 1. Sensational Sinatra, a macho-maimed mama's boy and pussy-whipped putz, a punk with a pack of pit dogs to rough up recidivistic reporters. Skip Town skimmed me the skinny. Frank flipped Flash Flood $5 grand to flip that song and hitch it up the hit parade. Impishly implied, Linda Lansing lanced Frank's libido and pulled him around by the pud. Payola payoffs and poontang, perennial poop for hush-hush. Sinatra sent me a nice note. Danny, how could you? The Pacific Dining Car parking lot, 10 a.m. Thursday. You know it will go worse if I have to send the boys out to find you. The boys. Freelance freaks out of Frisco. Greaseballs who grovel and suck up to Sinatra. Disciplined dispensers hot to hurl some hurt and rack up ringside seats for Frank's next stand at the Statler. Frank hates hush-hush. Hush-hush hates him. I published a piece on his private dock and his prick enlargement procedure. His pit dogs pounced on my Packard and blew it up on publication day. 10 a.m. Thursday. I deconstructed my dilemma. I contemplated compliance and concocted countermeasures. I strategized. I stripped the strait I was in down to strict essentials. I decided to frame Frank in the name of free speech. 8:30 a.m. Thursday, 12/21/55. I bopped by Ben Hong's herb hut in Chinatown. I bought a bushel of belladonna bulbs and a mound of man-eating ma huang. Hush-hush pushes panaceas and hopped-up health highballs to hipsters and high school kids. We pitch potency pills and cancer cures on our back pages and ship the shit out of a shack behind the Shangri Lodge Motel. It's legal and lethal in the long run. A loyal league of losers laps it up. Belmont High hopheads buy our bitter burdock buds in bulk and bounce off to Cloud 9 in class. I needed to nail a big bag of boo. Ben Hong heard me out. He said Bob Mitchum was moving Mary Jane to move out of debt with the mob. I buzzed Bob and blitzed him with a bit of blackmail bait. That bleached blonde who blew you in the Hialeah bleachers was really a high-class drag queen. Bob stuttered, sputtered, and spat out, "What do you want?" I said, "Drop some stuff on me." Bob kowtowed and consented. I popped out to his pad in Pacific Palisades and glommed a glassine-wrapped glob of righteously resinous reefer. I stoked up a stick in my Studebaker and stood on the gas. I mainlined my way downtown. I flew like a flipped-out flamingo. I flapped my wings and wafted back to earth on West 6th. I popped by the Pacific Dining Car parking lot. I slipped by in slow motion. I slid my eyes into slits. I reconnoitered, reefer-racked and wrapped in a marijuana mushroom cloud. I saw sensational Sinatra sipping a mid-morning martini. He was lounging by a lilac Lincoln. Two lethal-looking lapdogs were perched on a Pontiac coupe. They laughed and lapped up every line Sinatra launched their way. They were maladroit mastiffs on a mission to maul for their master. Their snouts were snagged and snared cloyingly close to his ass. The parking lot was packed. The Pontiac was penned between a Buick and a Boss Bonneville. I could undulate in and out unseen. I bipped down the block. I stashed my Studebaker off the street and bebopped back on foot. Sinatra had his goons in stammering stitches. Stale stuff. The story of Kum San Chin, the Chinese cocksucker. They didn't see me. I dipped down and duck-walked into the lot. I popped up to the Pontiac and whipped my bag of boo in a wind wing. I whizzed out of the lot. I winged down the street and wiggled into a phone booth. I dipped a dime in the slot and slid a call to Sergeant John O'Grady. O'Grady, grandstanding and greedy. A gratuitous need to grab grasshoppers and hurl himself into the headlines. He popped Art Pepper for pot and bagged Bob Mitchum on a boo bounce back in '48. He hauled in Hedda Hopper's hophead son just last week. He picked up. Narcotics, O'Grady. I said, "GETCHELL, bearing gifts." "I'm listening. You've got 3 seconds to catch my attention." I said, "The Pacific Dining Car parking lot, Frank Sinatra's goons, and an ounce of shit on the floorboard of a green Pontiac." "When?" "Now." "Is Sinatra there?" "You can't miss him. He's the skinny guy with the voice." I loped back to the lot and breezed up brazen. Sinatra saw me. The lapdogs licked their lips. I saw a big guy in the back seat of the lilac Lincoln. Sinatra slid on slick black sap gloves. They were wickedly weighted with dollops of double-aught buck. They packed a well-known wallop. The lapdogs leered at me. A mean-looking Mexican busboy sidled out a side door. He balanced a monster martini on a monogrammed tray. The lapdogs laughed at me. The Mex marched up and made mealy-mouthed "Si, senor" sounds. Sinatra popped his patent leather fingers. The Mex made a suck-ass sound and sunk down submissive. Sinatra snapped his fingers and snared the martini. He said, "You're prompt." He looked at his lapdogs. He said, "He's prompt, boys." The lapdogs laughed. The Mex sneered and snickered. I snuck a look at the Lincoln. The big guy in the back seat kept his back to me. I popped up to the Pontiac coupe. I said, "How's tricks, Frank? Your mother still doing her act with the mule?" Sinatra sizzled and simmered. Steam stormed out his ears and stung me. He made mincy fists. His martini glass shot into shrapnel shards. The lapdogs got lanced. The Mex got minor league mangled. They shook shards off their shirts and popped puzzled eyes at Il Padrone. The punk patriarch palpitated and pissed in his pants. Dig the dip on those gorgeous gabardines. I said, "I talked to Ava, Frank. She said you were hung like a cashew. I'm running it on the March cover. Sexy songster packs pint-sized pecker, gorgeous gardener says." Sinatra fumed and fueled himself into a fugue state. He stuttered, stammered, slobbered, slathered, and came off catatonic. His heart hammered. Buttons shot off his shirt and sheared me in the shins. The lapdogs lurched at me. The Mex made machismo-like motions. An LAPD narc arc arced into the lot. Everybody froze, frustrated and fright-fraught. John O'Grady jumped out. His paunchy partner piled out and paused by the passenger door. The lapdogs listed and almost landed in my lap. Glare glowed and shimmered off their shoulder holster straps. Badges. A shiny sheriff's shield and a BHPD button. O'Grady said, "LAPD, nobody move. Nobody say a fucking word." I looked at the lilac Lincoln. I made the big boy in the back. Sergeant Bob Duhamel, Beverly Hills PD. A payola prober propped up in a prime suspect's sled. The paunchy partner popped over to the Pontiac. He popped the passenger door and picked up the bag of boo. O'Grady said, "Who's this belong to?" Sinatra went knock-kneed and passed another passel of piss. The Mex moaned mumbo-jumbo and muttered, "Mierda, mierda." The lapdogs whipped their coats wide. Sun shafts shot off their shields. O'Grady ogled them. His eyes shot shield to shield. He said, "Tell me what we've got here and make it convincing. And tell me why Frank Sinatra just wet his pants." The lapdogs lowered their eyes. I felt their brainwaves broiling. They brought their eyes up bright and brutally bristling. They slung them slow at the Mex. Lapdog number 1 said, "We're working an interagency gig. Mr. Sinatra's gotten some death threats because of that payola thing, and we're bodyguarding him." Lapdog number 2 said, Yeah, and Pancho there tried to sell Mr. Sinatra some weed, but Mr. Sinatra said no. So Pancho planted the shit in my car 'cause he thought it was Mr. Sinatra's car." Pancho popped puddles of sweat. It poured off his pompadour. He stood there stunned and stamped himself with the stations of the cross. He dribbled and drizzled sweat. He dropped his tray. It popped to the pavement pulse-poundingly loud. Instantaneous instinct. 4 cops reached for their revolvers and ripped off short-range shots. They pin-cushioned Pancho and poured through him. They powder-burned him and poleaxed him and parted his pompadour down to his palate. Bullets bounced off his bones and belt-buckle and shot back at the shooters. Ricochets ripped the paunchy partner and notched his nose off his face. I cringed, crawled, crapped my pants, and ran. Chapter 2. I stashed my Studebaker at a storage garage. I walked to Wilshire and Western and hot-wired a Hudson Hornet straight off the street. I had to hide out. I watched the cops whack that wetback and wipe out one of their own. I spawned a spectacular fuck-up and got a cop killed. I mandated my own murder, and maybe much more. The fuzz would fuck me to cover up their snuff-snafu. Sinatra would seek to silence me and humble hush-hush. Payola played in and percolated at the periphery. I humped my Hudson Hornet to Hollywood. I hauled by Hal's auto dump and traded plates with a Triumph TR2. I tripped through Trancas Canyon and tricked a path through the trouble I was in. Skip Town shot me the shit on Flash Flood. I flaunted it in hush-hush. My prize prose prompted the Payola probe and pissed off Priapic Sinatra. Sinful Sinatra sought the scent of sex citywide. His loyal lapdogs doubled as blasphemous bloodhounds. They sniffed for snatch and snagged willing wenches out of waitress gigs and what have you. They latched onto Linda Lansing at a Lesbo cat house. Luscious Linda, Joy Lansing's curvy kid sister, lounge lizard Linda, a low-rent Lollapalooza living off lesbian love, a mercenary mama now in moonlight mode in mink coat TV ads. Linda switch hit and once swung with lip-smacking Elizabeth Scott. Late-breaking lowdown, Liz still torched for their torrid love. Linda's pay-for-play delight, delirious and delectable three-ways. The latest late-breaking lowdown, sexational Sinatra, the thrill-seeking three-way king. He finds Linda Lansing and lures her to his lair. She throws him into the throes of three-way ecstasy. Mamma mia, one man and two women waxing way out and wicked. Linda lassos Frank's libido and lays down the law. No more triad tricks until you make me a star. The king cons Sammy Kahn and has him hatch Baby It's Cold Inside. The tune tantalizes and titillates and ties into Teitelbaum furs. The king corners Flash Flood and flim-flams him and flips him a flotilla of cash. Flash is floored. He flips a tepid tune and leads Linda Lansing into the Payola pantheon. Skip Town skimmed me that scandal skank. It buttressed a boss backstory, but left me with big questions. Bob Duhamel, BHPD. A cop co-opted to the Payola probe. His BHPD buddy and some sheriff's shill. 3 cops caught up in shady and shameful shit with shaky Frank Sinatra. I flew by Flash Flood's flat in Flint Ridge. Fuck, Flood's Fleetwood sedan and a fleet of cop cars framed out front. Look, the lapdogs last seen popping shots at Pancho the Piñata. Beside them, Bob Duhamel, BHPD. Call it a cop conspiracy. Cop to the cost of the contretemps you created. Crawl out of the crap crashing down on you and live to launch libel again. I chanted that malevolent mantra. I charted a course to charm, cheat, chisel, and thrive. Laura's little log cabin. A mecca for mannish muff munchers and fawn-like femmes as fair game. A rustic rendezvous for rapacious diesel dykes. Loin-lapping Liz Scott's happy hunting grounds. I walked in wary. She-wolves shot me shitty looks. My rabid rep preceded me and pried a pack of boss babes off of bar stools. I devastated and decimated the room. I located Liz. She was waxing weepy into a whiskey sour. I nudged into her Naugahyde booth and nabbed some cocktail nuts. Liz said, "Help yourself, they're free." I lit a Lucky out of Liz's pack. Liz laughed low and languid. "You're scum, Danny. You're a tidal wave of karmic filth and dissension. I wouldn't fuck you if I was desperate and you were a beautiful woman." Liz looked luscious on her last cover shot. Lesbo's lol at log cabin, LAPD tells hush-hush. I popped a pineapple piece out of her drink and poured it down my parched throat. Liz lit a Lucky and laid a lungful of smoke in my face. I coughed up cocktail nuts and pineapple pulp. "You're a disease that they haven't invented a name for, Danny. You're lower than cancer." I tingled. Titillation tickled me. I groaned and grew a hard-on. I said, I always thought we might have clicked and had a swinging thing, if you had different predilections. Liz laughed light and lilting. On the planet Pluto, baby. Sometime around the 12th of never, but only if you dressed in drag. Oh, daddy-o, she was turning me on tumescent. I sucked my cigarette down to a cinder. Liz laughed licentious. A jukebox jerked on. Linda Lansing lilted out, Baby, it's cold inside. Liz lowered her head and laid out a lake of tears. I said, Linda's headed for Shitsville, sweetie. You know the drill on payola. Sinatra's too big to prosecute and Flash Flood will turn states. They'll make it look like Linda paid him to play her song and she'll take the fall. Lonely Liz looked at me. Barlight lit up her tear tracks and tributaries. I knew she had a handle on some hot stuff to help me. Very hush-hush. She winced and wiped her face. She whipped down the rest of her drink and chewed the cherry. She sucked the stem and stared at me. Her orbs sent me into orgasmic orbit. She said, You want information on Linda? You'll pay for it if you have to, and you're going to try to convince me that anything I tell you won't hurt her. You know that I'll give it to you if you're convincing, so be convincing and get out, or I'll send a 300-pound butch with brass knuckles over to kick your ass out of my life. Astoundingly astute, breathtaking brevity and bravado. I said, I'll plant a piece that you're straight and hush-hush. I'll leave you alone forever. I'm in trouble with the payola thing myself, and I won't write a fucking word about Linda. Liz looked me over long. She lit another Lucky and licked a loose leaf off her lip. Oh, daddy-o, save me from this sapphic siren. All right, Danny. One time and one time only. Linda told me she'd put in some innings with Frank going back to 52. She said she had some dirt on him and she used it to get him to bribe Flash Flood into playing her song. The 52 bit a big hole in Skiptown's skinny. He laid Linda and Frank out as a fresh item. I said, Where's Linda now? Liz said, I don't know. I saw her a week ago, right after they announced the probe, and she said something about making a run to Tijuana for Al Teitelbaum. I liberated a Lucky and lit it. Liz lifted a leather key fob and let it list on one long finger. 2104 Berendo, off of Los Feliz. She was renting the place, and I made duplicates on the sly. I snared the keys and snapped my fingers. I winked and whistled a whiff of One for My Baby. Liz laughed loud and let me know I was a loser. You're not Frank Danny, so don't even try. And I wouldn't fuck you if you had a sex change and came out Rita Hayworth. I looped back to Los Feliz and ran my radio dial en route. Ring-a-ding, a ripe news report. And here's more on the shootout at the Pacific Dining Car parking lot, which left a marijuana-peddling Mexican busboy and one LAPD officer dead. Static stung my ears. I ditzed the dial and diminished it. The newsman said, The busboy was identified as Juan Ramon Pimentel, age 24, an illegal alien. He was the #1 supplier of marijuana in the Los Angeles area and was the focus of an interagency investigation involving the LAPD, the Beverly Hills PD, and the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Pimentel was cornered in the parking lot, pulled a gun, and fired at 4 officers. He killed LAPD Sergeant Richard D. Jackson, was fatally wounded by the officer's return fire, and... Static browned out the broadcast. I breezed by Brewster's newsstand on Bronson and bought a Herald Express. Huge headlines, Heroic Cops in Gun Battle, 2 dead. I pored over the piece. It was officious obfuscation, doggedly dissembled with a profoundly pronounced pro-cop prejudice. Page 2 pics, John O'Grady posed with BHPD bimbo Bob Duhamel and the 2 police pit dogs. Jive on the joint police venture. Delirious demonization, dope, kingpin Pimentel. Obviously and ominously omitted in his omnipresence, wicked witness Frank Sinatra. 2 cloyingly close and collusive columns down, DA to drop payola probe. A dozen desultory lines, a perfunctory paragraph, lack of evidence and deemed insufficient, insinuating innuendo in my book. Unconscionably unmentioned, lewd Linda Lansing and triad trick Sinatra. 1 paltry pick. Demon D.A. J. Miller Levy, leaning into Bad Bob Duhamel. A captivating caption. Deputy D.A. Levy and Sergeant Duhamel also worked together on the celebrated Barbara Graham case. No mention of me. My payola piece prompted the probe. My marijuana machinations mandated a massacre. I was undeniably ubiquitous and ignominiously ignored. I shivered, shook, and almost shit my pants. My pulse pounded paranoically hard. I'd crusaded for truth in a Christ-like fashion and crossed some invisible line. Call me crucifiable. The newspaper neglected to name my name and thus nailed me now for negation. The world wanted me dead. I violated the venal and vindicated their victims. I sodomized silly celebrities and fragged and framed them as frail. I vandalized their vulture-like souls and sold them as soulless on newsstands nationwide. I modeled myself on Mahatma Gandhi and moved beyond that motherfucker in my quixotic quest for the truth. I triumphed over trials that would mash most men to mush. I delivered disillusionment as dystopian dish and entertained, edified, and enlightened. I was a spiritual spearhead, like that spook who sparked the Montgomery bus boycott. Hush, hush, out-hustles the Bible, at least in L.A. I was the journalistic Jesus about to get justifiably Judased. Chapter 3. I bought a bottle of bonded bourbon. I bombed myself out of my martyrdom mode and looped by Linda Lansing's lair lickety-split. I rapidly reconnoitered. I bipped around Berendo and cruised cross streets. I noted no cop cars. I hid my Hudson Hornet behind a hydrangea hedge and popped up to the pad. It was a mock Moorish mosque in miniature. Minarets, mauve awnings, and mesquite fronds out front. I let myself in. I slipped a light switch, slammed the door, and slid into a slaughterhouse. The stomach-stinging stench of flayed flesh, matted hair and maggot mounds on a mauve rug, blood blips on white walls and window panes. Linda Lansing laid out flat on the floor, slashed and sliced in a slit-leg gown, sharp shiv marks and sheared tissue torn out in striated strips. Blonde hair blossomed into a blood slick. 10 fingertips torn to the tendons and burned to the bone. A hot plate hooked into a wall switch. Scorched skin caught in the coils. I rocked, rolled, reeled, and retched on the rug. I made myself memorize the murder scene. Overturned ottomans and sofas stabbed into stuffing. Paintings pulled off walls and cut to confetti. Bookcases bumped to the floor and stomped to a stack of stale sticks. Bad burns on the body, scorched, scarred skin, cigarette circles. A batch of butts blended into a blood pool. Torment-inducing torture. Infernally inflicted. My inference, the inflictors intended to induce Linda Lansing into laying out something of interest. She rigorously resisted and refused to give it up. It was not information. Call it concealable. The inflictors invaded the house with the intent to find where it was. They went at it impulsively and impetuously. The implosive implication, it was still here. I looked at Linda Lansing. I blew the corpse a kiss. My memory snapped me snapshots of Linda alive and alluring and announced an anomaly. The live Linda ran lithe. The corpse ran reduced Rabelaisian. I nudged my noggin out of necrophile notions. I bopped to a back bathroom and made for the medicine chest. I pillaged pills and concocted a chemical cocktail. Sexy secobarbital and devilish dexedrine. Milltown to mellow them out. A bracing bromo-seltzer to bring the brew to a broil. I licked up my elixir and chased it with a Chesterfield King. It chugged into me and detonated a depth charge. I deliberately and determinedly deep-sixed the house. I tore up 10 rooms. I upended umpteen underwear drawers. I whipped up wall-to-wall carpets and filleted fine furniture down to fabric debris. I deconstructed daybeds, divans, and doily-draped dressers. I drained drain pipes and cleaned out clothes closets and shivved behind shelves. I beat the basement walls with a baseball bat and bored into a hot little hidey hole. Inserted inside, a packet of picks, glorious glossies, surreptitiously shot in cinemascope. Linda Lansing's boffing boss butch Barbara Stanwyck, steamy Stanny, still hot stuff. Linda loin-locked with Lana Turner, woo-woo, salivatingly sapphic. Linda tasting tough Tallulah Bankhead, Tallulah, too much. Linda limb-linked on a lavender bedspread, buck naked beside Barbara Graham and Al Teitelbaum. Sinful synergy, pervasive perversion, a tricky trio trapped on filthy film. A confounding connection. A furtive fur merchant, a murder victim and a murderess who graced the green room at San Quentin. A connection to confront. Bob Duhamel did duty on the Barbara Graham case. I pored over the pics. I stared at them and steamed them up. I dripped drool on Linda Lansing, lesed out and lithe. A dichotomy. Her corpse ran corpulent. Perched by the pics, a loose-leaf ledger. Latin names listed in left-hand columns. 5-figure money-makings mapped to the right. Martinez, Mandragon, Marquez, Mex monikers. Tostado, Trejo, Tarquez, Taco Heads All. Pelicar, Peja, P. Pimentel. Whoa, now, wait. 1 Pimentel. The pincushion, Pinata, at the parking lot. The make-believe marijuana Marvin. The bad luck busboy and scandal scapegoat. Huh? I packed the pics behind some pipes and laid the ledgers under a layer of loose linoleum. I beat feet to the back bedroom and bored through a bunch of books I'd flung to the floor. Va-va-voom, the Variety Directory for 1954. I leafed to the L's and found Lansing Joy, actress born 4/6/28, Salt Lake City. I leafed to Lansing Linda, singer, born 5/21/30, Salt Lake City. I looked at the Lansing listings. I perused 2 publicity pics. They blended blonde. They blurred and blossomed blissfully as near-identical twins. Nice stuff. I had the better one, so I should know. A vivid voice, low and Les-like. My hackles hopped. I hurled myself around and hoped for the best. I hitched eyes with Deputy Dot Rothstein. Dildo Dyke. Sheba the sheriff's she-dog at the women's jail downtown. A yenta with a yen for young coos. A large Marge in a man's suit. I came on cool. You look good, Dot. You make me wish I was a woman. Dot shot me a boot to the balls. I belched bile and bounced to my knees. Pain pounded me. Dot said, "Stay there. I like my women in that position." I stood up straight and strong. I flipped Dot the finger. She bent it back and bit it to the bone. Pain, lavishly localized, bopping off my bit bone to my balls, pillaging my pill-headed haze. Dot said, "Did you kill her?" I blotted blood on my blue blazer. "No, did you?" Dot handed me a hanky. "I loved her, sweet cakes. We had an occasional thing going, and we were making money together." I hankied up my hurt hand. "How?" "I was pimping her to some politicians who could do the sheriff's department some good." My pain pianissimoed. The Milltown mix was melting it mellifluously. Dot said, "She was shaking down Frank Sinatra. She shot him some sex, then threatened to turn him off if he didn't get her song some big play." Nix, niet, and no way. Liz Scott shared some shakedown shit with me and laid it out large on Linda, viably verbatim. She'd put in some innings with Frank going back to 52. She had some dirt on him, and she used it." Dot stared at me, stock still and stoic. "Care to tell me what you were thinking? And what you know about all this?" I shrugged like I didn't know shit from Shinola. Dot said, "They killed the wrong woman. That's Joy in the living room. I know Linda's body on an intimate level, and that isn't her. Joy always ran chubbier than Linda, and she had a key to the place. And if Linda's smart, which she is, she'll gorge herself on hot fudge sundaes and impersonate her sister until all this blows over.